Hello and welcome to this Women in podcast with Leah, who is a civil engineer.
Hi everybody, my name's Leah. I'm a civil engineer and I have worked in the industry for a very long time. I was fortunate enough to actually do some work experience before I started university, and I graduated university in 2009 and have been in the engineering industry since that time. I'm also fortunate enough to be the mum to two little boys. So it's a real privilege to be able to work and to be a mum, especially at the moment. And I'm excited to talk to you all today about being an engineer.
Thank you. We're very excited to have you. So I just want to ask you a few questions just about your career and just how being a woman is. So what made you want to become an engineer in the beginning?
So I really think that my passion for engineering actually started with Lego. So I have two older brothers, and I have a real distinct memory of one time in our playroom, sitting down with them, and we were very lucky. We had lots and lots and lots of Lego, and my two brothers were busy building planes and rockets and fighter jets and things, and I was very consciously building a hotel out of Lego. And that really set me on the course. I always enjoyed building things and seeing how things worked and just being aware of the world around me and just being fascinated by it. And so I genuinely thought, sort of mid-teenage years, I was going to become an architect. I thought that's what I was going to do. I was going to design things and build buildings. But I was never very good at art, which was a stumbling block. But I was very good at maths, and I was very fortunate that somebody kind of pulled me aside and said, have you thought about becoming an engineer? And I actually spent the day with a female engineer when I was sort of 15, 16, and it was a real light bulb moment. She took me onto construction sites in the centre of London, and I could really see, that's what I wanted to do. And that set me on a journey. I very much picked my A-levels around becoming a civil engineer, and kind of just took every opportunity I could to get any sort of experience. And even the university course that I picked, I got some really amazing advice from my sister, and said, engineering is really a very hands-on topic. You want to be able to show that you understand that it's not just sitting behind a computer screen or on a piece of paper doing equations. And I went to Nottingham Trent University, which offers a 4-year course, and that third year you spend actually out in the industry working, and it kind of just absolutely felt the right thing to do. So that it really did start as simply as playing with some Lego, and it's kind of just taken off from there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I also have two older brothers, and also very similar in the sense of them sort of being very practical. Never got to me.
It's really interesting. My older brother, one of them is also an engineer. He's a mechanical engineer, but then my oldest brother, not at all, very much into the arts, very much is now in advertising and things like that. So yeah, absolutely, it doesn't necessarily mean that, and neither of my parents are engineers or in any way, so they don't quite understand how they've created. Both of them worked within the Jewish community, so they're like, we've created an engineer. Not sure how we've done that, but yeah, really through a love of being practical. I like IKEA, love an IKEA set. I'm very weird like that. Love building flat. So that kind of thing.
So you've spoken a bit about your journey, and sort of what made you become an engineer. So I was just wondering, for this podcast, has being specifically a woman impacted you for the positive or the negative in any way throughout that journey?
That's a really good question. And I think I'm aware that I think initially I was very fortunate and there weren't really any stumbling blocks. My real stumbling blocks came from myself. So academically at school, I really struggled. I actually failed one of my A-levels and didn't do very well in the other two. and I was fortunate, and kind of at that point I realized, I think, that academic stuff wasn't for me. But I think the biggest difference now, and compared to when I was at school, was apprenticeships weren't such a big thing. And I think if I was going through this process now, I would maybe have considered going through an apprenticeship route, where you can study and be on the job at the same time. And I think that's great. And so I was fortunate enough, I took a year off, and rather than going on year course, which I think was what I expected I was going to do, I actually went and worked for a year in a civil engineering company. And it wasn't a thing there that I was a woman. There was no expectation on me to, you know, fall into a particular role just because I was a woman, which was fantastic and kind of gave me that confidence that, and an expectation it wouldn't be like that anywhere else. I think the two kind of closest experiences in the UK I've had of kind of being a woman and it being a bit odd was, I was on site one summer between university years, and one of the guys kind of was looking at me, and I was thinking he's kind of a bit unsure. And he you know, he built himself up, and he came up to me and said, "Why are you here?" And I explained that I was a student and that I was working within the surveying team, and we were on I was at Canary Wharf, and they were building one of the new high-rise blocks, and that a surveyor, you have to one of the jobs is to make sure that the building is going up straight, which you can imagine is quite important.
Yeah.
And I was not very good at surveying, but they needed somebody to sit next to a piece of equipment to make sure it wasn't tampered with. So I was very happy to do that. And he came up to me and he said, "Yeah, what are you doing here?" And I said, well, and I explained what I was doing, and he said, but won't your clothes get dirty, or something to that effect? And I said, well, maybe, but then I'll put them in the washing machine and they'll become clean again. And he said, oh, okay. He said, you don't want to be in the office then? I said, no, I'm very happy out here. It was a beautiful summer's day. It was very nice being outside. And he sort of looked at me again, and he had a good thought. And then he's like, okay, then, would you like some chocolate? And he offered me a bar of chocolate. And ever since then, I had no problems. And it's really interesting that, that a lot of it is around getting dirty, because when you work on a construction site, it's usually muddy, it's usually cold, especially in the UK. It's usually, you have to be prepared to get a bit dirty with mud or concrete. And I think a lot of men in particular are kind of surprised that for some reason women are okay to get covered and kind of get in there and get messy. So that's been the biggest issue. I would say I don't know that many women who have had issues, which is really great. Especially in the UK. I think in the UK, the industry is much more accepting of women. I have been fortunate to work abroad, and there were a couple of kind of inappropriate behaviours that I witnessed and was part of, and it made me realise how lucky we are in the UK, where there is just an acceptance that it's, women are going to be on site, women are going to be in the office, they're not going to be making the tea, they're not going to be the ones doing the minutes or the secretarial jobs. Women can be engineers, and I think we're very fortunate. I think then that's been my experience. I've been very lucky that I've kind of barriers haven't been put in front of me. When I first started out as a graduate, one of my first jobs was working night shifts. So I actually, within civil engineering, I specialize in tunneling. So and that's a 24-hour job. And I used to have to work night shifts, weekend night shifts and things like that. And there was never a sort of, oh, but you're a woman, you can't work at night in the dark. People made sure that I was safe, and I was never felt that I was put at risk. And if I felt uncertain about something, people would always be comfortable to say yes, because I would be working in town, and sometimes on a Saturday night, you don't, as a woman in general, I think it's a sad state of affairs, but you want to be accompanied, and people always supported that and never made a big deal. So yeah, I think when I speak to people and they, sort of it's less a surprise now. There are more female engineers, and I think that's really great. A lot of the big projects that you probably would have heard of, like Crossrail or HS2, make a real big point of promoting women and making sure that women are visible on the project, which is fantastic.
Have you sort of noticed that more and more that they are giving a push for women to be on these projects?
I think so. I know there's definitely a real sort of want to have an understanding that actually having a mix of male and female on site and in the office makes for a better team and just a different way of thinking. And I think that's one of the strengths that these large projects can do, is really promote women within the industry. We're still nowhere near as on an equal footing as we could be, and I think a lot of that is because a lot of women unfortunately don't think engineering's for them, which is really sad. But it's a fantastic industry to be in. Like, I think when I talk to my friends and they sit at a computer screen, and to some extent what they do isn't visible. They move numbers around and do all sorts of things. And in the summer, I took my 2 boys to Crossrail and said, Mummy, this is what Mummy did. Mummy was part of this. And I think that's incredibly special, and I'm really very proud of it. And it's, to physically to be able to touch things that I can say, I built that, or I know what's behind there, or
that's really cool.
It is really cool. It's really cool. It's a real perk of the job. And I made a real effort when I was early on in my career to work the long hours. So I used to work. So my friend is a doctor, and she was a junior doctor around the same time as I was doing shift work, and she and I would probably be doing similar hours. So I worked sort of 12 hours or 10 hours a day on a rota, days and nights and things like that. And that was really hard. I missed out socially quite a lot. But I recognized that once I was older and had kids, it's not something I can do. But the great thing about civil engineering, or I think engineering in general, is there's so much choice. I'm still in the industry now, but just a different part of it. Now I sit in an office and behind a computer screen. And although what I do affects something on site, it's not quite as physically standing there building a tunnel, which is what I did. I was on one of the tunnel boring machines for Crossrail. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It was but hard work, really hard work. But, yeah,
you spoke a bit there about now sort of changing what you do, being in an office. Is that the way you've sort of managed to balance? You mentioned you had 2 kids now, so is that the way you've managed to balance that? Your work life.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, and it's a little bit in the news at the moment, it being International Women's Day yesterday. It's actually, I would say, one of the hardest things about being a woman is now, where there's still, unfortunately, an expectation that women are the ones, doing the majority of the childcare. And in my family, that is my case. Like, I'm the one that's now working part-time, while my husband is continuing to work full-time. And there's an understanding that my career has taken a hit. I have perhaps not gone further along in my company or in my project than I would have done, just because for the past 3 years, I've either been on maternity leave or worked part-time. So in some respects, that's difficult as a woman. And I'm it's admittingly something that I'm still kind of getting my head around. But at the same time, I'm really fortunate I can still work within the industry. I work 2 days a week, and people kind of, and people have found, we found a job for me, and that's really great that people, my company is very supportive of that. And they've kind of, when I came back, I've only come back from maternity leave in January. And when we started the conversation, they kind of said to me, well, what do you want to do? you know, what are the hours you want to work, and let's find a way of working with that. And that's amazing. And I think partly the pandemic has helped with that. So this idea that people can work from home has meant that there's a lot more flexibility and people are a lot more understanding. And I think that's been a huge shift, which is fantastic. So yeah, so life-work balance is always difficult. I don't think it will ever not be difficult. But at the moment, I think actually one of the great things about engineering is that, yeah, there's so many different things that you can do and still be civil engineer. You don't have to be sitting at an office designing a building. You don't have to be being on a construction site in a hard hat and bright orange high vis. And, you know, there's lots and lots of choice. And that's great.
Yeah, I think the shift after COVID, the shift of most things being online now, has really changed a lot for a lot of people, and the being able to do things. I've really enjoyed listening to your story. I found it really interesting.
Thank you.
And yeah, from how you became an engineer to your journey throughout, and even being able to go abroad, and really cool things that you've done. I just wanted to ask you finally if you have any advice for, this is for students, any students, they might be engineers, they might be thinking about becoming engineers, any advice that you have for them as they step into their career?
So number one, I think if you're thinking about becoming an engineer, go and find an engineer. There are a few of us around. Talk to us. Go and look on there's various different institutes. So there's an institution of engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, any type of engineer. And they're a really good place to start. They can put you in contact with people who, if you can't find somebody yourself, they can find somebody to talk to you. And then see if you can find somewhere to go and do a day with or experience them. Engineering, really at its core, if you really want to get a good understanding of what's going on, is a good place to start is on a construction site, because you can really see what especially in civil engineering, what's going on and really what the kind of real base level is. And everything around civil engineering is getting stuff built on the ground. Whether you're still working in an office as a designer, eventually you hope that it's going to get built on the ground. If you start there, I think it's hard work, and it's especially, I think, if you're not used to being forthright and blunt and out there, it's very nervous, and I can relate to that. But it's really good experience, and it will give you the best start in life if you can be on site. And I think, yeah, the other thing I would say is, if you're struggling academically, don't be worried about it, because engineers don't necessarily think academically. Don't necessarily think that, you know, anyone can be an engineer. So if you're interested in it and you find it exciting to do, and you wake up in the morning and you want to go to work, stick at it, and maybe think about other ways of being an engineer. I genuinely, when I first thought about becoming an engineer, I thought I was going to sit in an office and design bridges. That's what I thought I was going to do. I have never done that. I have no urge to design a bridge. I have no urge really to sit in an office. I really much more enjoyed being on site. It's a lot of fun. It's, you know, it's a really good teamwork effort, and you have a lot of fun out of it. And there's lots of chocolate and tea, which is really great, real great bonus. And you meet some really interesting people. So yeah, that would be my advice, is just go for it. And, you know, when I was a student and I was doing this work experience in my third year of university, you know, that every so often, you know, somebody would come up to me and go, Leah, can you help with? And I always said yes. And sometimes it meant I was working on a Saturday night, but it gave me such a breadth of experience that I still think about today. And I think that especially when you're younger and you've got that flexibility, just say yes. Just say yes and ask lots of questions. That would be mine.
Amazing. Saying yes and getting experience early on.
Yeah.
Good advice. Is there anything else you want to share, or before we come to an end?
No, thank you for having me, and I wish everybody good luck with their careers and their studies. It's great being a student, and it's a really exciting time. I know it's difficult now, and it's different to how it was when I was a student, but try and enjoy it. Have a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much. That was really, really amazing and interesting to hear. You're empowering a lot of women, a lot of people. So thank you in the work you do.
Thanks.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you for your time.